Hello students and welcome to video 3 chapter 1.2 types of business entities, and in this video we're going to cover the rest of this chapter, and this will all be about social enterprises. I apologize for the noise outside. There's a machine working outside, but hopefully you can hear me clearly. So firstly, what is a social enterprise? Well, a social enterprise is any business that doesn't necessarily make profit and revenue the core objectives of the business. So you can see its objectives will be something like make some profit. So with for-profit social enterprises, they're still trying to make money. They also have some objectives which are there to benefit society. And which of these two objectives is important? That depends on the business. So you can see down here, we've got, I'll just move myself. You can see down here on the left, we've got not-for-profit. On the right, we've got for-profit. And you've got traditional businesses over on the right. Traditional businesses in general have been run for profit, and the benefits to society haven't necessarily been that important. On the left, you've got the traditional charity, which is just generally run to benefit society. And then in between, you've got a sliding scale. So if it's more to the right, then profit becomes more important. If it's more to the left, then benefiting society becomes more important. So where the business actually lies depends on the objectives of the business. So the first type we'll look at are private sector for-profit social enterprises. Long word, but we can break it down. So private sector means that it's not in the public sector, so it's not owned or controlled by the government, so it's owned by entrepreneurs. It's for-profit, so they're still trying to make money, but it's a social enterprise, so benefiting society is still important to them. So these are similar to other private sector businesses that try to make profit, but the differences are things like some of the profit will be used to benefit society. So rather than paying out to the owners, they will put some money back in to try and do some good with society, whether that's socially, whether that's environmentally, or some other method. They'll also try to run their business in socially responsible ways. Now, an example is down here. This is a company called Juntos. I hope that's a good pronunciation. This is an Ecuadorian company that basically they sell shoes. And again, they're selling shoes and they're trying to make money from selling shoes. But one of the things that they do is that every pair of shoes, they will donate a backpack with school supplies to a child somewhere in Ecuador. And so, again, they're trying to make money, but part of their mission as a business is helping society. Now, a good question here is, well, what about big companies that do make profit, but then do other things which are trying to enhance their brand image? Well, I think it becomes a little bit cloudy here, a little bit muddy. What is the right answer? It's difficult. So there are a lot of companies, if we go back to the previous slide, there are a lot of companies which are traditional businesses which are there to make money. But these days, consumers are demanding that companies become more ethical with their approach towards society, towards the environment. So they're now adding things to their business to make them move along this here. So at what point do they stop being a private sector business and become a social enterprise? Well, that's very difficult to answer. I guess it comes down to what's their objective. Are they doing things to benefit society because they want to benefit society, or is it to get more customers to like them? And that's impossible to know. So that's why I say that it's a bit cloudy. Next up, public sector for-profit social enterprises. And these are public sector meaning owned by the government. And again, these are run similar to the private sector for-profit social enterprises. And what they're aiming to do is they're trying to make money if they can, because they want to hopefully raise money through taxes, which they can then use to spend on other services for the economy. And they're generally looking to provide essential goods and services for the population. So they're companies, they're owned by the government, and they're trying to provide services for the economy and the people that necessarily might not be provided in the private sector. So one example is the electricity in China is owned by the State Grid Corporation of China, and this is a public sector company owned by the government, and they run it like a normal business. So customers will pay them for the electricity. And the idea is that hopefully they're trying to provide an essential good and service at a reasonable price. And alongside, they're hoping to make a bit of money. Now, whether they do make profit or not is sometimes not the point. If they do make profit, then they can use that to spend on other parts of the economy. But if they don't make money, then in that situation, taxpayer money would then be used to subsidize that business. Another example might be motorway tolls. So in some countries, such as France, for example, to go and use the motorways, you have to pay a fee, a toll, in order to use the motorways. So again, this is an example of a public sector for-profit social enterprise, long term that. And in this situation, they're trying to provide an essential good or service. I guess, is a motorway essential? Well, let's just assume it is. But then you pay for it. In other countries, motorways are free. So here in Germany, the motorway, the Autobahn, they're free, and they're paid for through taxpayer money. Next is a cooperative. And cooperative, this definition is, I don't like this definition very, very much. So these are for-profit social enterprises. They are owned and controlled by its members and run for the common benefit of all of its members. That's a really, really confusing definition, but when I give examples, hopefully this will make a bit more sense. And decisions can be voted on by members democratically. So those that the members of the business can vote democratically. So let's give an example. A producer cooperative. So in this situation, the members are the producers. And one example is farmer cooperatives are one of the best examples. So what can happen is if one farmer on their own tries to sell their crops or whatever they're producing to a shop, then they might not have much power and they might not get the best price. So historically, what some farmers have done is they've joined together to form a cooperative. So cooperative is a bit like the word cooperate. So they're working together, and by working together with the buyer, they can negotiate better prices when they sell it. Also, when they're buying inputs such as fertilizer or grain or things to feed their animals, they can hopefully negotiate better prices. The idea is by being together, they can be stronger. And so this is an example of a producer cooperative. So go back to the definition. It's owned and controlled by its members. So it's owned and controlled by the farmers, and it's run for the common benefit of the farmers. And the decisions can be voted on by the farmers democratically. So the point of the business is to benefit the members, who in this situation are the producers. There are also consumer cooperatives. These are less common, but they do exist. And historically in France, Crédit Agricole, agricole here refers to agriculture. So this is another example where farmers, historically this was run for the benefit of the farmers, but here the farmers were the consumer because they were buying from this business. Now, Crédit Agricole is a bank. And the farmers were borrowing money. So in that situation, the farmers were the consumers. Now, historically, because harvests come once a year generally, before the harvests come, the farmers may run out. Hello again. So sorry about that. Students just came in. So with Crédit Agricole, so farmers before their harvest, and when the harvest they get their money. In that situation, they may need loans to provide them with income before they get the money from the harvest. Now, an employee cooperative, again, is not as common as a producer one. But for example, if teachers group together, so teachers would be employees, if they group together and form their own school, most of us teachers, I think, have had that conversation. Why don't we start a school together? So what we would then do is the idea is we'd run it according to how the teachers want the school to be run. Now, in Germany, a good example of a cooperative is Edeka, and they were founded in 1898. And Edeka stands for this long thing in German, but translates as purchasing cooperative. So it's a purchasing cooperative, which means it'd be a cooperative of colonial goods retailers in this district in Berlin. So, briefly, some evaluation of these social enterprises. Now, I'm grouping all of these together, so some of these pros might not be applicable, but in general, they're beneficial because they benefit society, but they also generate a profit. So it's almost like a win-win. They not only generate profit, but they're also benefiting to society as well. Now, from the public sector point of view, they don't need taxpayer money. So, for example, with the electricity company, they hopefully won't need taxpayer money unless they make a loss. But they're generating their own income because people are buying their services, and therefore they're self sustaining. They don't need to rely on taxpayer money, whereas other government businesses will. Um, and hopefully it'll be motivational for employees. So if you think about yourself, if you're working for a business which is trying to benefit society, then they're more likely to hire employees. And those employees will feel more motivated because they feel like they're doing good in their job, in theory. Issues to consider funding. So they obviously need investors, and the investors may need to be more patient, and they may receive lower returns on their investment. And the easy way to think about that is if the business is generating profit and using some of that profit to spend on things to benefit society, then it's quite probable that they're going to have lower profits. So the investors may need to be aware of the fact that they're going to get possibly lower returns, not necessarily, but possibly lower returns. But this is part of ethical investing. Now, greenwashing is possible here. So, is the business generally a social enterprise, or are they just a for profit business? And they're looking to use their environmental goals as greenwashing. So, they're not doing these things to benefit society, they're doing it because they want customers to like them, and to therefore they'll get more customers. And also, growth can pose more challenges. So, as the business grows, they'll have more investors, and it may be more difficult to stick to their core beliefs from the beginning. Final thing are non-profit social enterprises. And these are now businesses that are run not for profit, but they're there to benefit society. Now, where does funding come from? Well, it may well come from donations. So on the right here, we have a lot of non-profit social enterprises in England, and most of these are charities. So charities get their money through donations. So people give money to the charity because they want to help that cause, and that's how they get their funding. Some businesses also sell goods and services. So, for example, in England, the Salvation Army is a non-profit social enterprise, and basically one of their objectives is that everybody should have the means in order to buy clothes and be able to clothe themselves. So they receive donations, but they also sell clothes at a pretty cheap price, and therefore they receive money by selling those clothes. So they're able to sustain themselves through donations and also selling clothes. Finally, an NGO, a non-government organization, and that's pretty much very, very similar to a non-profit social enterprises. A non-governmental organizations are ones which are not owned and controlled by the government, and they have some sort of social mission. So World Wildlife Federation protects animals, Amnesty International is a human rights organizations. In general, NGOs have more of an international outlook, but not necessarily. We are now finished with chapter 1.2. See you next time.